Hello everyone and welcome to the Everywhere An Empty Bliss video, where today me and Saturn are going to be discussing this album, which contains the outtakes of Everywhere at the End of Time. And basically this was the final Caretaker album, at least under the name, in 2019. And there are two different versions, the digital version and the CD version.
Hello guys.
So we're going to start with the first track, which is Loss of Want back there. This track is a pretty somber but also a great way to start off the album. The title is very interesting too, and it feels like a mourning yet acceptance, which I think is pretty interesting. It almost sounds like the departure of someone, like the death almost of the caretaker, which I think might be a good way the track is made. What do you think of the track?
Probably one of the most famous Everywhere An Empty Bliss, if not. It's very calming and soothing to me. It's always a good way to start an album to me.
I think it would. Where do you think it would fit well in the album? I'm thinking stage 2.
Yeah, I'd fit in stage 2 or late stage 1.
Yeah. So the next track we have is An Empty Everywhere. This is one of the first post-awareness tracks here, where there isn't really a discernible melody. It's just filled with some noise and just, well, not really much, since the title is fitting, it isn't empty everywhere. I imagine it would fit well somewhere in post-awareness, or maybe just a glimpse of it in stage 3. What do you think of the track?
It definitely fits somewhere near Mournful Camaraderie.
Yeah.
And I feel like the name might represent everywhere you go is kind of like you have an empty feeling because your brain isn't really recalling too much. So it's your brain and imagination is kind of empty with some out of control stuff going on. And you can't understand, so everything is like empty.
Yeah. So next we have Empty Beyond oh wait, no, we have I Might Be Vanishing. This is the shortest track in the entire Caretaker discography. It's just 10 seconds long. So the track is just 10 seconds, and it's similar to I Feel As If I Might Be Vanishing from An Empty Bliss, but it's at a higher pitch, and of course it's very short. What do you think of the track?
Well, to those who might not know, this is actually played at the same speed as this sample is. And at the first thing, when you hear that little that's actually from a separate song. It's called Someday Sweetheart, Somewhere Sweetheart. I think it's Someday Sweetheart.
Interesting.
And then the second part is I Guess I Expected Too Much. And it's really interesting. It's very short, but probably I Might Be Vanishing probably means something that you're vanishing away from this world as you slowly lose memories, but at least you have some more happy moments to recall.
Yeah. So our next track we have is Empty Beyond Beyond Beyond. The title is fitting here. The way the track loops in an ominous way and the notes carry on is pretty interesting, and it reminds me of just looking into the abyss, kind of. The titles are pretty interesting because they're all mashups of titles from An Empty Bliss and Everywhere at the End of Time. What do you think of this track?
Probably one of my favorites in Everywhere An Empty Bliss. And I feel like the name might represent like an empty bliss beyond this world and an empty everywhere maybe. But empty beyond, like saying beyond 3 times. It's probably like way beyond this. I'm not sure what it means, but it might mean maybe way beyond this world, because way beyond this empty bliss, beyond this this or way I'm sorry, way beyond this empty world. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay, I'm sorry. Way beyond this empty bliss beyond this world.
Yeah. So next we have My Heart Is True, and this is one of my personal favorites. This track sounds pretty happy unlike some of the previous ones. This is another sample from Russ Morgan, and Russ Morgan has some of the best samples in my opinion, and the Caretaker makes excellent use of them, just like Labette's Delay, or Back There Benjamin. It sounds pretty happy, and honestly, I think it would fit pretty good somewhere in early stage 1. It does give off a very joyful mood. What do you think of the track?
I do know it's by Russ Morgan, but I forgot what the sample name was again.
So Help Me.
Oh yeah, that's right. So help me. It's a very good CD track. Like a lot of people think about it. That's cool. And um, yeah, that's all I can say about it. But like, I feel like My Heart Is True is like similar to My Heart Will Stop and Joy.
Yeah, and it doesn't really remind me of Dementia, but just like a happy, like a love song that they might be familiar with. So next we have Losing Battle of Loss. This one is another quiet track, and it definitely sounds like it's in mourning. The title could probably represent something similar to Stage 2, where there's a losing battle, and the loss isn't just repeating the word losing, but rather the loss of the memories. What do you think of this track?
Another one of my personal favorites in this album. And to those who do not know, Losing Battle of Loss and Losing Loss of Battle are the same tracks. There's no difference in them except their Losing Loss of Battle was a few seconds shorter. And Losing Battle of Loss is a very old song, so that's probably why you hear that weird whooshing at the start, because it was sometime in the 1800s. But besides that, this is a very good track. I love it so much.
Yeah. So next we have another PA track, and that's Advanced Plant Camaraderie. This track is full of harsh noise, such as the static, and the crackling, and a lot of different, and some very hard to tell samples playing. It could represent that even with all the advanced plaque in the mind, there's still a camaraderie looking out for them. Although it's not one of my personal favorites, it is still pretty good. What do you think of this one?
I like it, and you kind of hear those you can hear trumpets in it at some points, and you can at the first 10 seconds or something, like when you just pause it, you hear that like winterize or something, or like that little just high pitched bell noises, whatever it's called.
Yeah. So next we have I'll Always Be Bewildered. This track is similar to Bewildered in Others' Eyes from Stage 3. This time though, it's at a higher pitch, and the track goes on for much longer without the short loop. I personally like this track more, and although it's not as creepy to me, I think it's pretty interesting. And the title is nice as well, since it's pretty similar. I like this one a lot. What do you think of it?
It's similar to Bewildered in Other Eyes, and also there is a short difference because it does not loop, and it doesn't play the first thing like neither of them do. But besides that, there's another thing that's different. So basically, like when you hear a Bewildered in Other Eyes, it's like you heard that it did dun, and then All Eyes Bewildered, it's like dun dun dun. So it's like it's actually using the same sample of it instead of it being echoed and distorted.
Yeah. So next we have another interesting track, Glimpses of Life Denial. From what you can hear, this track is nothing like we've really seen so far, even in that Everywhere at the End of Time. This track is called Santa Claus Goes to Hall in the actual name. That's the actual sample, and I'm pretty sure it's a wax recording from the 1800s of a woman reading Santa Claus Goes to Holland, which I believe is a poem. It's really interesting because the voices are barely able to be heard. Like, you can barely make out what they're saying, and I think that would be a good representative from the patient's point. And maybe glimpses of life denial could be them denying their past life. What do you think of the track?
It's a good track, but it's not the best, and it's kind of one of the first that you'd hear talking really in the caretaker. But
Yeah.
it at the end you kind of hear a bee because you can hear buzzing through it. And
Yeah,
if y'all didn't know, you can see dead bees on the dead bees on the ground.
Yeah.
And also an empty bliss beyond this world, like the caretaker kind of did a thing where if you scramble it up and make another word, it'd be PM. Why bees are very silent.
Which is interesting. Listen to this. We can hear someone shout a bee and then a loud crashing noise, which is pretty interesting. And the album does tie into bees a bit. So next we have Equinox Eyes Will Stop. This track kind of reminds me of All Eyes Bewildered. I really like it. It sounds like whistling, and it is pretty catchy. And who knows, it could probably fit in stage 1 or stage 2 somewhere pretty well. What do you think of it?
This is probably my personal favorite in Everywhere An Empty Bliss.
Yeah.
It's very good. It should deserve more attention. And like, who doesn't like it?
Yeah.
It's good. And also Lonely Way Ahead, which will be next. That's an unused track from it's called Cloudburst. It's an unused track from Paul Whiteman's Grand Canyon.
Which is another great piece of music. And this one was probably meant to be The Way Ahead Feels Lonely, so let's play it. While I don't think it's as good as D5 and carries the same emotional impact, I still think it's a great track. And it is a little sad that it didn't have a place in Ever at the End of Time. It doesn't take as long to get started off like D5 does. It is still a really nice one. And yeah, not really much else to say. What do you think of it?
Nobody thinks about it in CD version. And The Lonely Way Ahead, again, like I said, it's an unused track from the 1 out of 4 or 5 tracks used from Paul Whiteman's Grand Canyon Suite.
Yeah.
Which were, if you didn't know, I Still Feel As Though I Am Me, Glimpses of Hope in Trying Times.
And D5.
And D5, yeah.
So the next track is similar to Losing Battle of Lost. This is Losing Lost at Battle. It uses the same samples and incredibly similar, but there's a different sounding noise the way it cuts off at the end. I personally prefer this one, but they're very similar. What do you think of it?
Well, they're both really the same. It's just a very tiny time difference.
Yeah.
And I don't really have much to say of it. Instead, it just switches to Losing Lost of Battle instead of Losing Battle of Lost. And next we have Plaque Advance Despair. And if you never knew what that is the Revolving Bandstand and the Garden of Weed.
Those are 2 tracks all the way back from Selected Memories from the Haunted Ballroom, which is pretty interesting because it wasn't really sampled that much in Ever at the End of Time. This is one of my favorite of those tracks because of the way it calls back to that album. And Garden of Weeds was also a pretty awesome track there. And definitely would fit pretty well in Post Awareness. Not much else to say. What do you think of it?
It's good.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite, like, kind of tiny Post Awareness tracks, you could say, in Everywhere An Empty Bliss.
Yeah.
And it just sounds It just sounds kind of so funny sometimes. I do not know why.
Yeah. And speaking of funny, here we have another very iconic one. This is Benjamin Beyond Bliss. And you'll soon see why this track is so, like, sticks out. It's not even music. It's a voice that cuts in and out. And if you're wondering what this could possibly be, I believe it was a radio or something interview with Leighton and Johnston, who of course have a lot of samples used and just the entire discography of the Caretaker. And you can hear different voices that cut in and out of the track. What do you think?
Well, I don't think it was a radio broadcast. It was it was um it was actually from a song that Leighton and Johnstone used, "Birth of the Blues."
Oh, I didn't know that.
And yeah, you hear talking at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so also at the near the end there will be like hallelujah, and then there will be like some like a 3 seconds of music before it cuts out and loops one final time.
Yeah. And we also hear the word Leighton and love of use a lot. Next we have Drifting Sublime Hope, which has two different versions, the first being the CD. This is one of my favorite tracks because it sounds really hopeful, but also at the same time a little confusing and scared. It personally reminds me of a much more coherent E6. The title's also pretty interesting, and it comes from That Lovely Weekend, which is yet another great sample song that I really like. What do you think of the track?
To be honest, I like the digital version better. There's nothing wrong with this. It just sounds much more sadder and like want more hope, something like that.
Yeah. And there's also the way the track ends, or at least the loops. It goes off on a very high note, but also very confusing one. Like, you won't know what's happening, and I really like that. So next we have Drifting Sublime Hope, the digital version, and this is really interesting because, for those who don't know, it's the same track, identical, but this time it's played in reverse. And the way the track works is, if you know the melody well, you can still tell what's happening, and the way the track ends and then just plays in reverse is interesting. Usually you can tell when the song plays in reverse because you hear a note getting louder and louder as the track fades back in. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. What do you think of this version?
It's good. Another one of my personal favorites. I like how it's reverse. That's all I can say about it.
Yeah. Next we have Minimal All You Are. And for those who don't know, this uses the same sample as Equinox Eyes Will Stop. I don't know what it is, but it definitely sounds similar. Almost like a song someone would play on maybe a recorder or a flute. It's definitely harder to hear and not as high-pitched, but I still like it. What do you think of the track?
Well, from the sample, there's actually a lot of talking in the sample. Equinox Eyes Will Stop is just the first, and then Minimal All You Are was the second, when there was also like a guest and the professor doing the music, and because it was playing for banjo and the something, I don't know, I forgot, but it's different and worse.
Yeah. So next we have Hidden Minimal Sleep. This is yet another static track, and I'm not that big of a fan of it. Honestly, I prefer Minimal All You Are out of the two minimal tracks. And it sounds similar to the Great Hidden Sea, The Unconscious. It's very quiet, cuts in and out. Not really much else to say. What do you think of it?
It's good, but I'm not really a fan of it either. That's all I can say.
And here we have a post-awareness track that is unique because it would fit well in stage 6. This is Internal Unravel. It has the loud booming of stage 6 that overtakes any song. And of course that does make it stand out a little bit compared to some of these other tracks. And the title's also pretty interesting because inside they're just unraveling. This is, well, interesting. What do you think of this one?
Oh, sorry, I sneezed.
Bless you.
it does fit very well in stage 6, but I feel it's more like the end of the transition from stage 5 to stage 6, like just right in the middle.
Yeah. Next we have Dusk Memory Fraction. And this is our final of the voices tracks. This is another wax recording. I'm pretty sure someone is saying or singing something, and they also start whistling pretty soon. The title is also pretty interesting. I'm not too sure what it means. Maybe a fraction of their previous memory remains, and yet the dusk will still come on it. There's also echo too. What do you think of this one?
Well, the sample I think was called a Lost Salade Rosé. It was made by a French person.
Yeah.
And I feel like dusk memory fraction might just mean just fractions of your lost memories that are getting more distorted, but like only a dusk of it.
Yeah. So next we have our final of these post-awareness tracks, which is Entanglement Sign Uptake. This one is pretty interesting, and it reminds me of Internal Unravel if it was a lot louder. It cuts in a lot, and it would fit really well in a lot of places, specifically in stage 5, possibly in M1. What do you think of it?
Well, I know near the end you can kind of hear Sagarella's heartaches. It's very good, and I feel like the name represents like very stage 5 because it's entanglement. It's like an entanglement in the vegetative state because of the synapse, and then it's like you're aching so much.
Yeah. Next we have the return of I Might Be Vanishing. Not really much else to say. We've heard this one before. But this next track is one of my favorites of the India entire discography. This is Elusive Sunshine. And this is the final grand goodbye from the caretaker. As their memories, or maybe the sunshine begins to elude them, you get one grand triumphant goodbye. And I love this track. What do you think of it?
It's very jazzy because most of Charlie Spivak, I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
Songs are very jazzy and classy.
Definitely. I don't really want to spoil this one, but next we have Ann Bliss, Everywhere Bliss, our final track. And it's simply beautiful. This track is once again very mourning, similar to the first track, Loss of Want Back There. It feels like a final acceptance. Even after the caretaker is gone, this might be their funeral, or just a solemn goodbye to them. I don't want to play too much of this because it's a beautiful track, but I definitely recommend you hear it yourself. This and Elusive Sunshine are a great way to end off both the CD and digital version. And there is truly bliss everywhere. What do you think of it?
Well, it's just like, it's kind of better than Mournful Camaraderie. I think it fit after Mournful Camaraderie.
Yeah.
Just even though it's distorted in the last memory, and Bliss Everywhere Bliss would kind of be the last because it's the last last very coherent thing, and you'd hear it like after Mournful Camaraderie.
Yeah. So next we'll take a look at the album art, which is PM YBs Are Very Silent, which I'm pretty sure is the name. It's pretty interesting, and it's similar, and this is the CD version of it, but the digital is just the same thing without the bottom. And people say that there are bees that look like they're dead here, which is similar to the title, and, you know, hearing the bee at the end of Glimpses of Life Denial. And I can barely make out a Titanic or a ship, like this is an ocean. What do you think of the art?
Well, I feel like the little thing that you said that looks like an ocean, I feel like that actually kind of looks more of a I feel like that looks more of, you know, it's like maybe the brain or very severe plaque, or just random trash, or possibly a beehive. It kind of looks like a faded beehive. And it looks like you can see some of those yellow spots, big, like maybe they're big bees or something, or honey spots.
Yeah. So overall, this is a pretty fantastic album, and definitely one of the best of the Caretaker, and a great way to go off. And at the time of this, the Stage 6 video is not out, but it will be by the time this one is. And I'd also like to say that, yeah, it is a fantastic album, and I don't think it would go well between Stages 3 and 4, because all these tracks are different places. Do you have anything else to say?
This is a very fantastic album. I hope you guys can listen to it if you never heard it before. And just thank you guys for watching.
Yeah. Have a good day.